In the old Matrix movies, there's a very powerful scene when the character realizes the life that he's actually living. He awakens to find himself in a pod surrounded by millions of other pods, with each one having a person in it. They've been living a virtual existence where nothing was real. They didn't even know about it. And it was such a powerful scene because we thought, oh man, that looks nasty, that looks disgusting. Who would want to live that way? Well, let's cut to today. The virtual existence is slowly growing in our country. I'm not saying we're going to turn into the Matrix and be living more and more in a pod and things like that, but more and more people are kind of turning to the virtual by choice. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is the grind. When we're grinding all the time and just never stopping, we kind of want to escape the daily grind, so we go to virtual escapes and it becomes easy. You see, men grind all the time. It's what we do. But we allow ourselves sometimes to be controlled by the grind. And that's going to hurt us. And that's when escapism seems like the normal thing to do. But we should live different. We've got to break free of the grind. And in today's show, we're going to learn how. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the Confident Man Podcast, empowering men with the confidence they need to live their adventure. Now, here is your host, David Maxwell.
Hey guys, welcome to the Confident Man Podcast. I'm so glad you joined me here today. We are continuing our March Man Month, where we're kind of going through the month of March, taking some of our most popular topics, creating new content on it every day, Monday through Friday, putting out a new podcast just for you to help you grow as a man. Today, we're talking about breaking free of the grind. Now, understand when I say that, I'm not saying we shouldn't grind. We're men. Grinding is sometimes part of what we do. We're grinders. We get things done. However, the nonstop grind hurts us as men. We keep going and going, kind of like computers. You know, a computer's created to just go and go and go. But we're people, and we're not wired the same as computers. We're not the same as computers. We're human beings. And even a computer gets resets, they get updates, and they eventually get replaced pretty quickly. How long do your phones last? Do you replace them often, or do you wait as long as possible? Everybody's different, but eventually your phone's not going to make it. In fact, people don't have an iPhone 1 or 2 now anymore. They just don't. We're humans. We're not supposed to be going all the time. We're designed to have natural ebbs and flows of life. The problem is a lot of people don't. They're just grinding. They're never stopping. And that's where the trouble comes in, when they don't stop. And it's a tough one for us to recognize sometimes as men, because men, we like the grind. We're good at it, but sometimes it becomes our identity, who we are. In fact, I've known guys who'll brag how long they work. Oh, I work 80, 90 hours a week. I only sleep 2 hours a night. That's all I need. And what that really tells us is how sad their life is. I'm not saying you don't have seasons where you work 80 to 90 hours a week. Everybody does. But what I'm saying is that shouldn't be all the time. You see, these guys may not be in a virtual, pod like the Matrix, but a lot of these same guys will run away to virtual escapes to escape the grind because they're living only to work. They're living just to make it through. And work is good, and we should work, and we should work hard. And there's sometimes we got to suck it out and grind it, but that shouldn't be all the time. And if it's happening where it's all the time, we're gonna burn out. Now, I know the term burnout has been overused and overdone, but it's a reality. A lot of guys do burn out. A lot of guys use it as an excuse, but a lot of guys genuinely do it because they don't stop. So how do we break out of that? That's what we're going to talk about today. It comes down to understanding the seasons of your life. Understand the seasons and then at that time you will break out of the grind. Now, I'm not talking about the seasons as far as when you're a young man and an old man and all that. I'm talking about the regular flow of life that happens in seasons. And we're going to talk about that and how that helps you break out of the grind. We're going to understand the seasonal rotation. We're going to learn how to embrace the seasons, and we're going to learn what happens when we ignore the seasons. The first thing we want to talk about is the seasonal rotation. This is the biggest thing we need to grab a hold of if we want to break free of the grind. We've got to look at our life from an agricultural perspective. Now, most of us aren't farmers, so that may be a little difficult, but you understand the seasons. So that's the breakdown of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the 4 seasons and how we can look at our life from that seasonal aspect. You've got spring, summer, fall, and winter. Those are the 4 main seasons. Very important when you're growing crops, when you're doing things. But it's also important in our life. It's also important for us to understand that our life has those seasons too. And when we think about our life from the seasonal perspective, it can help us kind of break out of that grind mentality. So the first one is spring. Spring is a time of preparing. It's a time of sowing your seed, putting the seed out there, getting things ready. Summer's coming and you have to be ready for it. You have to know that summer's your busy time. And so you want to get ready for it. So there's a lot of preparation and setting things in order during the springtime. And in your life, your spring season is that time of putting input into your life and your big picture thinking. And you're kind of working on that calendar of what's going on. In the spring, you plant things because I want this to come in June, this to come in July, this to come in August. So that's when you kind of think about your calendar, what's going to happen in it. So let's look at the input aspect of our life. Input is when you think about, what am I putting into my life? A lot of times we do that with food, we do that with other stuff, but we never think about it in other ways, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. What are we inputting into our life? How are we preparing for growth? See, a lot of people say, I want to grow, but they don't want to prepare for growth. Growth takes work. We have to sow our seed. We have to do all of these things to prepare in farming, but for our life, it's the same thing. You're not going to grow unless there's something there to grow with. We think we can take a pill and grow. Doesn't happen that way. You've got to put stuff in. So what are the seeds you're planting in your life? What kind of seeds are you putting in there? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What kind of coaching are you getting? What are you doing to consistently put things into your life, to put seed into your life so you have something to grow with? It's not going to happen automatically, but there has to be input before there's output. And every man needs to understand that. And every man needs to also think about the big picture, his working calendar is what I call it. Do you think about your calendar? Farmers do. When they think about when they're planting what, when it's going to come up, when they can use the ground again. That's that big picture thinking. They have a working calendar in their life. And as men, we have to do that with our calendar. You have to control your calendar as much as possible. See, the truth is, if we don't control our calendar, somebody else will. And as men, we've got to take control of our calendar. Now, you may have a job that kind of drives your schedule. Like maybe you do shift work at a factory. And, sometimes they say, hey, we're doing 7 days, 12-hour days for the next month. Okay, that's a reality. You've got to deal with that reality. But what can you control in your calendar? What are the things outside of your job that you can control? You see, as men, we have to be calendar ninjas and make sure our calendar doesn't run us, but we run our calendar. We've got to understand that the important stuff has to be on the calendar. During the busy seasons, we try not to do extra stuff. We understand that sometimes life has those busy seasons. We don't want to overload the calendar at those times. We also want to put things in there. When are you taking your breaks? When are you doing family vacations? How are you keeping your marriage together? Things like that. Those need to be put into the calendar. What are you doing to take care of yourself? How are you conducting your self-maintenance? Those are all calendar things. People think, well, I know it's important, Dave, but if it's not on your calendar, you're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. So you need to own your calendar and make sure that your calendar is doing the job it's supposed to, which is helping you maintain those seasons and do things in the right way. Okay, that's spring. Let's talk about summer. Summer is harvest season. That's when you're out there, bringing the crops in, doing the stuff, getting it, stuff is coming to fruition in this part you're still preparing. You're doing a lot of work in the summer. What's ripening, you got to pick. What's almost ripe, you got to protect. It's a busy time for people who are in that industry. Now it's nonstop work. It's busy. They're preparing, they're bringing it in, they're doing what they got to do. Everyone has a summer in their life. Some of you, your job has seasons of busyness. And you understand that and you want to organize your life around it. If it doesn't, then you can maybe kind of garner to where you pick seasons of busyness. Maybe you own your own business and you know, okay, this is my busy season. This is my busy season. You say, well, Dave, every season's busy for me. Well, not every job is that busy. Sometimes we want them to be that busy because it makes us feel good, but it's not. Every job has seasons where they're busier and where they're not. And you want to flow in that. Now, during the busy seasons, you want to understand when that is. And know, what do I do during the busy season? What happens during that? Well, in agriculture, they do weeding. You've got to fight weeds. It's a big part of what farmers do because weeds will take the nutrients away from what you're trying to grow. In your life, you've got to fight weeds, especially during busy season. What are the things that are stealing your time and your energy? What can you do to get those back? How are you giving away your energy? How are you giving away your time? And during a busy season, you don't want to do that. What's worth your time in a busy season? That's where you can know maybe there's some things you need to stop doing that's just not worth your time. I know people who've stopped cutting their own yard, even though they enjoy it during the busy season. They pay someone to do it because it's worth more to them to have those few hours. And so you want to figure out, what do I need to do? What do I not need to do? And you kind of got to get ruthless. You got to go, what am I going to cut? What am I going to keep? I know some guys who what they did when their children were little, life was busy, everything was happening. They had some hobbies they really enjoyed, but they put them on hold until their children got a little older. They said, I want to be present during this season, so this hobby, this isn't as important as my child. So I'm going to put it on the shelf. I'm not getting rid of it. I'll go back to it once they get a little older and they're doing more things on their own. Now, watering is the other thing. You weed and you water. Without water, crops don't grow. It just doesn't happen. So in our life as men, what are we doing? That's self-care. You've got to, especially during busy season, think about self-care. What are you doing spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically? These are a big part of your life and how you stay strong during a busy season. And maybe during a busy season, you have to combine some things. Like I know guys who they'll go for a walk while listening to a book. They'll go for a walk while talking to their spouse. They'll go for a walk and pray. So they're getting two things done at once during a busy season. They may not be able to go to the gym all during the week. They may not be able to do a lot of things during busy season, but they look at what they can do. How are they watering themselves? What are they doing? Weeding and watering are really what you need to focus on during that busy season. Now, the fall. You've got spring, you've got summer, now we've got fall. Fall is the time where they store up everything that they've harvested. They put it away. They bring the rest of it in. And they kind of get back and enjoy the harvest. They're canning. They're doing stuff that they need to do. For us, what does that look like? Well, celebration is one thing. We call it harvest festivals and all these things. Why? People are celebrating. You put in hard work. You need to celebrate. Life without any celebration is pretty dull, and nobody wants to live it. And a lot of men, they're going to find ways to celebrate, even if they're not good at planning celebration. And sometimes those celebration things aren't good. It's not good for them. But what you want to do is be purposeful about your celebration. What are you doing to celebrate as a family? What are you doing to celebrate at your work? Are there special events, vacations? I know some families, every week, they have a special dinner at the end of the week. That it's a special time, and it's kind of a weekly celebration of a busy week, and nothing interrupts that dinner. So that's what you want to do, is find those moments of celebration. Find those moments of enjoying your hard labor, enjoying what you did. Farmers enjoy the fruits of their labor. They've got all this food. They've got the stuff. We need to find ways to enjoy what we've done, our hard work. That helps us develop gratitude. It helps us build relationships. It helps us build those connections with the people in our life. We don't want to stay in summer mode all the time. We want to have a time to celebrate, a time where we just enjoy the hard work we've done. That'll really help us connect. And that's during fall. Now, winter is another season. Winter is all about rest and repair. Those are the big components of the winter. It's kind of a downtime from doing all the work out in the field, but you work on your equipment. You do things. You kind of organize your shop. You do the stuff you got to do. For our life, it's making sure we have rest and repair in our life. What are we doing to regularly add rest and repair in our life? Maybe it's the wisdom of having a Sabbath each week, where you're taking a day off. You get away and do things that rejuvenate you on other days. You have your rest like just regular sleep. A lot of people forget that having a good night's rest does a lot for you. It helps a lot. It's the one thing you can do each day to help you have energy for the next day. But a lot of people hurt their sleep. They do things that hurt it. So what you want to do is plan your rest, plan your repair. It's a time of you planning out, what am I going to do? How am I going to rest? What am I going to do? And it's also during the winter is when the farmers look at the big picture of next year. What am I going to plant next year? Maybe this year I did this and next year I'm going to do that. In your life, what that looks like is, what's my purpose? How did I do last year? What am I doing this next year? What kind of big picture thinking do you do in your life? Do you bring into your life? What is my purpose for living? Why am I here? What's my legacy? What am I leaving to the next generation? Not just money, but what am I investing in them? These are questions you ask during the winter. These are questions you ask that are big picture. You're planning out, what is my life? What do I want my life to be? It's also a time of connecting. When you work hard and you're grinding and doing, a lot of times your connections with those you love can kind of break down a little bit because everyone's busy. Well, during the winter, it's kind of a built-in time. The farmers couldn't go out and do anything. The weather was too bad. So what did they do? That's a lot of time when the family spent time together. That's a time when you can repair those relationships. And I'm not saying repair as in they're in trouble, but you want to build that connect time. You want to build that relational time. You want to build that into your marriage or your marriage is going to suffer. And there are a lot of guys who are workaholics. They never stop. And the thing that does make them stop is their families leave them. Their lives are destroyed. And that's just not good. Or they do something stupid to do self-care because they're not maintaining their life. You want to make sure you do that. You want to make sure you build roots. Building roots is your purpose and your relationships kind of coming together in your life. So you want to build those, and that happens during the winter. Now, the seasonal rotation is kind of something we can do to map out our day. We can map out our week, our month, and the year with it. It's adjustable to our life. It's not something that's really based on the actual seasons, but it's your seasons. You can have where this week you have a time of, spring, summer, fall, winter, in 1 week, in one day. You can put those seasons in there and think about your life in that way. What am I doing to rest? What am I doing to recuperate? What am I doing to grind each day? And what am I doing to enjoy the grind after each day? You start thinking like that, and you're going to find yourself living a more balanced life, and you're going to find yourself actually being free from the day after day grind. The second thing we want to talk about is embracing the seasons. Now, we just went through a long explanation of all the seasons, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. But I'm going to talk about why you should embrace the seasonal aspect of life, the seasonal aspect of your life. Why embrace the seasons? Well, it helps keep us balanced. We can just tend to lean one way or the other. Men are naturally passionate. So when we get into that area that we're very passionate about, especially if we're grinding, we can kind of get tunnel vision and focus just on that and forget everything else. Well, that's not healthy. You want to be balanced. Just like if you lift weights or you do any type of exercise, you want to build up your muscles that you don't use all the time, because those are the ones that help balance you out and keep you from hurting yourself by only focusing on one muscle group. If you only focus on one muscle group, the rest of your muscles are going to get weak and it's going to hurt everything. You're not going to be able to function as well. When you embrace the seasons, you're keeping yourself balanced. You're working on different areas at different times, and this is going to give you that strength you need. It's also going to keep you from burning out, because you're getting the rest you need. You're getting the input you need. You're getting that material to keep from growing. It also helps us to look up from the grind. When your head is down and you're grinding, you kind of forget everything else, like we said. But when you have the seasons of life, it helps you look up and take notice. Hey, where's my life going? What's the purpose of my life? What are my relationships? How much time am I spending with my family? These are questions you should ask. But when you're in the grind, you don't. Some guys never look up from the grind. They're just grinding, and then one day they look up and their family's gone. Their wife has left them, took the kids, and they're like, wait, what happened? Because they never looked up. So when you embrace the seasons, it helps you kind of look up from the grind. It also helps us as men look within. When you're busy working, you really don't think, what's going on inside of me? But the seasons help you understand that you're not just here to make money and pay bills. That's not the purpose of your life. Seasons help us ask the big questions. What's my purpose? What am I doing with my life? When you embrace the seasons, it helps you find more meaning and purpose in your life. It's not just about the grind. Grinding is part of our life. Hard work is part of our life. We're men, that's what we do. But that's not the only purpose of our life. It's not the only thing we do. We have a life outside of the grind. That's kind of the purpose of the grind, is to build your other life too. So we want to balance those out. And it helps us look within to figure out how we're doing. The seasons also help us build that flexibility. It builds that flexibility in us and our family. It brings variety. Just like your diet, you don't want to eat the same thing all the time. You don't want to do the same thing all the time. When you embrace the seasons, you have that variety. You flow in the seasons. You stay connected to your really good relationships. You know how each other are doing. You're connected in what's going on in their life. And it's kind of a natural ebb and flow. And we get that flexibility of life because we know, hey, we're in this season, but soon we'll be in that season. And you can even do that in your day. I'm in this part of my day. Now I'm in this part of my day. It also allows us to disconnect our identity from work. Now, this is important because as men, work is very important to us and it's good. A lot of our identity comes from work, and that's fine. But here's the problem. Not all of your identity should come from work. Okay? Seasons help us to find that identity outside of work. Work is not the end-all be-all of your life. It's not the purpose of your life. You can be great at your job. You can do a lot of things. But if you have no family, if your home life is screwed up, what's the point of making money? Just to have money so you can buy toys to enjoy by yourself? That's not a good view of life. But a lot of guys, that's how they're looking at life. They're thinking, I'm going to get all the money and then I'm going to do all the other stuff. You're not, because the grind has become your identity. So when you embrace the seasons, you learn how to have identity away from work. Work is good. You should work. You're a man. It's what you do. But it's not your only identity, and that's important. When you embrace the seasons, it does encourage, though, good work, good effort. When you know you're in that summer season, that grind time, that busy time, you can give it all. You don't have to focus on the other stuff because you're taking care of it. See, a lot of guys, they grind, but they have that gnawing guilt. Oh, I'm not doing this with my family. I'm not doing this with my life purpose. I'm not doing this, that, or the other. I'm just grinding. And that gnawing kind of keeps them from really giving their all. But when you know that you're taking care of these other areas, when it comes time to grind, you can focus and you can be all in because you've taken care of the other areas. So that's why you want to embrace the seasons. It actually helps you grind better when it's that time. And it also encourages healthy celebration. When we choose to celebrate, we make better choices. When we celebrate out of necessity, out of the fact that we're grinding, so I deserve something, well, a lot of times that's when guys do really dumb stuff. Like a lot of guys who are workaholics are oftentimes hiding addictions behind it because the addiction is the only way they can celebrate their hard work. Or they take their family on a vacation out of necessity because they're about to leave them. And that's just making up for their hard work. That's not a celebration. You want a celebration to be genuine, to be fun. You want it to be a time of connecting. You don't want it to be done out of guilt, out of manipulation. You want to celebrate and really enjoy life. What's the point of life if you're not going to enjoy some of it? You're going to work hard, yes, but you're also going to celebrate and enjoy life. That's why you embrace the seasons. Okay, the third thing we want to talk about is what happens when we ignore the seasons, when we don't think about the seasons. Well, a lot of times when we ignore the seasons, our thinking gets messed up. we kind of get into this delusional state and it causes a lot of problems. Like for some guys, they kind of get that Superman thing going. I can be Superman. I know that I can handle it. I know other people have burnt out. I know other people have destroyed their life, but it's not going to happen with me. I'm Superman. I can do it. I can handle it. I can handle 90 hours a week and do all this other stuff. It's just a lie. We can't handle it. And when we ignore the seasons, it's going to hurt us. Because what happens when we ignore the seasons, life gets out of balance quickly. There's no such thing as a perfect work-life balance. People who say you need to find a perfect work-life balance have never lived life, because life sometimes is going to throw curveballs at you. Things are going to happen. When you recognize this and you begin to work with seasons of life, you develop a healthier attitude. Plus, you become more intentional with your time. You know that, hey, I need some of this season in my life. I need some of this season in my life. I'm only doing the summer grind, but I need some spring. I need to put things into me. I need some winter. I need to have connections and get some rest. You build those things into your life, so it's a more balanced approach. There's no such thing as a perfect work-life balance, but there is intentional life living. And that's what you want to do. And that's what seasons help you do. It also keeps you from what I call burnout and wasted work. When you're ignoring the seasons, you're pushing yourself to go harder and harder, but you're doing it without proper rest, without proper rejuvenation. So you're actually going to take longer to do things that you would be able to do quicker if you had your rest, if you're doing the good things. It's just like a farmer. If he ignores taking care of the soil, eventually the soil is not going to produce as much. So he's going to try working harder and harder and harder, but it's really going to produce less and less and less because he's not taking care of the soil. Same thing in your life. When you start ignoring the seasons and thinking you can just go, 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 then what's going to happen is you're going to actually become less productive. So that's going to make you work even harder because your productivity will keep going down because you're not doing anything to take care of yourself. And we don't want to do that. And when we ignore the seasons, discouragement often is just waiting for us. You know, we never stop. And so we get tired, we kind of get down, we're working hard, but not as much is happening. We get discouraged and we start having those thoughts of, what's the point? Why can't I catch a break? How come everybody's against me? You know those guys. You've worked with those guys before. They're always complaining. It's always someone else's fault. They never take responsibility. A lot of those guys have gotten hurt because they're ignoring the seasons. They thought they could work forever. They thought they could do everything forever. And it just didn't happen. So they got bitter. They got cynical. And they kind of spew that cynicism all over everybody. You don't want to live with that kind of discouragement. You want to be a person who embraces your seasons so you don't get that way. But if you ignore the seasons, you'll become more cynical. When you ignore the seasons, you also lack that relational connection. The seasons help us get connected to those we love. If you're married, to your wife. If you have kids, it's your kids. If you're single, there's other important people in your life. You want to have a good relationship with them. But if all you do is work, you'll never see them. You'll never feel connected. And a lot of people get in that busy season and they kind of think, oh, what am I doing to connect with my people? What am I doing to connect with those I love? My wife, my children, those I really care about. And then that, like I said earlier, will hurt them in that season because they have that guilt of what they're not doing. But when you embrace the seasons, you stay connected. When you ignore the seasons, you lose connections. You're not making sure that happens, and you'll drift farther and farther apart. When you ignore the seasons, you also lack roots. Our personal depth as men won't increase if all we do is work. If all you do is work and grind, you're never going to grow. You're not going to develop as a man the way you could. What's going to happen is you're going to kind of become a robot. You're going to get into that thing of I go to work, I do my job, I come home, I sleep, I binge watch, I go back to work. You kind of become a robot, and that's not good. Nobody wants to be that way. You want to be a man. You want to be a man of passion. You want to be a man of life. But if you don't have roots, if you don't have a purpose, if you're not living that purpose out, then you're not going to have that. You're going to become just another robot at the factory. And you say, I don't work at a factory. Yeah, you might as well. because you don't really have roots of who you are as a man, why you're here. And that's not good. So you don't want to ignore your seasons because of that. And the last thing with you ignore your seasons is you're going to breed bad choices. When you get tired, you make bad choices. You say dumb things, you do dumb things because you're tired. You just can't handle it. And so you're going to be one of those guys who you'll get caught up in addictions, you'll get caught up and be by yourself. Things are going to happen. And what's going to happen is your bad choices will come out of exhaustion, out of tiredness, and you're not going to make good relational choices. You're not going to make good choices in what you do and don't do. And a lot of times those things will end up destroying you even faster because there's adding on to the fact that you're not stopping from the grind. You're ignoring the seasons of your life. You don't want to be a guy like that. You want to be a man who has roots. You want to be a man who has purpose. And the number one way to do that is to embrace those seasons of your life. All right, guys, closing out the show today, we have to understand the grind doesn't have to own us as men. We aren't destined to grind our whole life and then just die. We can still work hard, and we should, but we can do that and have a life worth living. What's the point of life? It's not just to grind. We do grind in our life, but we want to enjoy our life. We want to live our life. And the key is to understand the seasons and implement them into your life. That's going to feel awkward at first. It's going to take some time, but I encourage you, keep doing it, keep going at it. When you start thinking about your life seasonally, what season am I in? Is it a grind season? Is it springtime? Is it fall? Is it winter? No matter what, you're going to figure out what you're supposed to do during that time. And you know what? It's going to make you stronger. It's going to make you better. Your life's going to be a whole lot more enjoyable. You're going to have much better relationships. You're going to be living life on purpose. I'm not saying everything's going to be perfect, but you know, life gets a whole lot better when you're not just surviving, when you're not just living week to week, making a paycheck, paying bills. When life has a little bit more meaning than that, your life has a little bit more meaning. And that's what you want to go for. Embrace the seasons. As men, we want to live our ultimate adventure. And that's what I want you to do. Live your ultimate adventure. Don't become some matrix character who's escaping and running away to a virtual world because he doesn't like his own world. You want to break free of the grind and be a man who knows, hey, this is the season to grind, but this is also the season to get the input, to celebrate, to build my relationships, to live a well-lived life.
You've been listening to the Confident Man Podcast. Click subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can connect with David on Facebook and Instagram at David the Maxwell. Find resources to help you as a man at theconfidentman.me. That's theconfidentman.me.